All right, we're here with Neil Palache. This is Tim Blanchard with Divorce 661. We're talking with Neil today. Neil is a divorce coach and founder of the Wealth Creator Company. As a divorce coach and for the Wealth Creator Company for women, Neil specializes in financial consulting. He also has founded and runs the Divorce Transition Professionals and International Network. His financial experience stretches over 5 decades, during which he was an insurance agent, a financial advisor, a registered investment advisor, and a divorce coach and consultant for the last 14 years. Neil lives in and works in Westlake Village, California. Has been married to Stacy since 1987. So, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Great to see you, Tim. Thanks for having me on your show. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for doing this off the cuff. I know you weren't expecting this, but if you're anything like me, you can your level of expertise, you can just pull it right out of a hat. I'm sure.
Exactly. Looking forward to it. Thanks.
Right. So I thought it'd be a good idea just to I kind of talked about your background a bit in the introduction. Anything else in your background that we should know about?
Well, I suppose we could add that I was born and raised in London, England. I came over here in 1979. Uh, I have three kids now. They're two of them are almost 20. I have twins, and I have a almost 22-year-old. So they're all in college and further education, and driving us less crazy than they used to. Let's put it like that. So all is
Gotcha.
good. There you
Yeah,
have it.
for sure. So with all that background that I went over, can you tell us what your definition of what you do as a divorce coach?
Yeah, I'll be happy to. As you had mentioned, I was an insurance agent, a financial advisor, and so forth. Did all that for 25 years, and in 2009 said, "Okay, I'm going to take a little detour." But I've learned all this stuff over 25 years, so I'm not going to go into a completely different career. And but I didn't want to manage money and insurances and all that any longer. So
Hmm.
the coaching and consulting made sense. Now, who am I going to do that with? Like, I'm not going to be all things to all people. So I actually hired a coach. Said, okay, what are we going to do here? What am I going to do when I grow up? And we first of all said, okay, well, I think you're best working with women because I now work with women only.
Hmm.
And then secondly, be in the divorce world, work with a few, widows and so forth. But that's kind of how
Yeah.
it came around, and it's been really great. Yeah.
And as a divorce coach, what does that entail?
Yeah, it's a little bit different than well, it's a lot different than a financial advisor in that I'm not handling money and so forth. So when I'm going through the coaching and consulting process, essentially I'm working depending on where my client is in that process, right? So you've got the pre-divorce, pending divorce, if you will, and post-divorce. A lot
Uh-huh.
of clients come to me prior and say, okay, what am I getting myself into? What's this going to look like? Am I going to be a bag lady? Is there going to be any money left when we're done? That kind of thing. And so we go through the process and what does that look like? And then when they're filing, they're going to use someone like you, or they're going to hire a lawyer or mediator and so forth. And I'm still involved potentially, but now it becomes a little more of a legal matter, of course, and I'm not a lawyer. So we need to have that type of advice. And in a post-divorce setting, once they're done, now they know what they've got and what they don't, and what's life going to look like. And typically my clients, I don't know, 50-ish, maybe. So they're kind of saying, okay, well, you got a good 20, 25, maybe 30 years of good solid working potential left. What's that going to look like? What did you always want to do that you didn't do? Let's not settle. Let's go for it. And so, we work on building that plan for them.
Gotcha. Yeah, and we were talking briefly before we started recording that I'm in Santa Clarita, you're in Westlake Village, which is good. I'm sure your business is within the U.S. Unless you, I don't know, do you limit yourself to your local area, or do you work with anyone in the U.S.? But for I know there's some people that they like to. And you sounds like you have like a very high touch business.
Mm-hmm.
Not very personalized type service, but I'm glad you're local because I'm looking for someone to refer to if people are having problems with maybe there's some issues that they need to resolve, and maybe I can convince them to get some help from you, perhaps, and then maybe they
Sure.
go through a more amicable divorce because of your coaching.
Yeah, and any time people can go through an amicable, I think that's a great word for it. I mean, our tagline in my divorce transition professionals organization is making divorce just a little bit easier.
I saw that.
And that's kind of and that's kind of what it's all about.
Did you trademark
So
that? Because I might steal it.
yeah, I'm not saying. I mean,
Okay, fair enough.
it is all about being amicable and getting the more of a mediation, settlement, negotiation, and not like pulling each other's hair out and your own, like mine,
Yeah,
and making sure that things can be done and settled, and that the kids aren't messed up as a result, and all this other good stuff. So yeah, it's definitely important to get it done as quickly as possible, and get it done with as little stress as possible, which is difficult to do, admittedly.
for sure. And you said that you get involved in the process pre, during, and post divorce.
Mm.
What is your role like when it's in the middle of a divorce? Are you meeting with their assumable attorney, or
Mhm.
your role is outside that scope to kind of set them up for what is going to happen?
Yeah, so first of all, it depends on the attorney, quite frankly, because some attorneys are uncomfortable with having me involved or anybody else involved in a phone call or something, due to client confidentiality issues and so forth. Others are not, and when I'm involved in that conference call or Zoom, or if I'm in a room, then everything is discussed. But it's important to understand that I'm only working with the wife. I only work with
Yeah,
women. So I don't go into a room, and I'm sitting there in a collaborative setting, let's say,
right.
and I'm the coach for the entire team there. No, I'm not. I'm representing the woman, and that's who I work with. But you have to be involved to a degree. If the attorney, for instance, is not comfortable in sharing information with me directly, that's fine. Then it gets shared through the client, right? And maybe
Right.
emails get forwarded to me, and I take a look at them. During the divorce, I'd say that my job is fairly limited. It's really often a function of helping my client to fill out FL forms, for instance, or and maybe it's not even helping filling out the forms. Maybe it's just getting the information together so
Mhm.
that the forms can be filled out by somebody else. Like, I may not be involved in the actual completion of the form,
Right.
but you got to have information, and not, in some situations when you've got a marriage where it's not terribly open, you got to really search. You got to go digging for that information. Sometimes my clients don't always have access. A little tough.
For sure. The document prep that I do for the last 10 years. So people that are able to reach an agreement on their own, or kitchen table, what have you, for us, and they can avoid going to court. Like your service, that's just one more tool in the toolkit to help people remain, amicable, which is my goal. I wanted to ask you, when you say you're on the phone, perhaps could you give an example of some of the, obviously don't reveal specific, information, but look like, are you offering feedback during the call?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm offering feedback. I mean, so I was on the call. I was on a call with my client, her attorney, just earlier this week, and it was a discussion due to the fact that her husband's attorney had sent in a settlement proposal with regard to spousal support. And so then it becomes a discussion about, for instance, what is the response going to be? Are we just going to accept it and say, yes, this is fine? Because in this case, my client has all the income, and the husband actually doesn't have any income at the moment due to COVID. And so, but there are expenses, and it's interesting because there was a discussion that ensued about the fact that the amount of money that was being requested, while not entirely unreasonable, would still put her into the red. The expenses that were there, and nothing unusual, like nobody's driving around in $150,000 car.
Yeah.
They're pushing at about, she's got about $1,000 gap between her income and her current expenses, and she was being asked to pay $2,200 a month. Well, that puts her into the red. So where are we going to find that money? Or what's our counter proposal going to be? So it became, it's a cash flow budgeting question, and I'm involved in that. But in terms of the legalities, I'm saying to the lawyer, like, okay, well, this is what I'd like to do, but can we? Like, is it legal for us to request this, or, is this beyond the pale? And, in some cases, I'm helping my clients to ask questions. They don't even know what to ask, honestly.
Or maybe they wouldn't have even seen without your advice, showing them how that looks financially, that actually put them in the red. Maybe the number looked okay to them. They didn't realize it was really putting them into the red.
In some cases, for sure. I mean, people don't have budgets for the most part, right? They're just they're living their life, and they got the debit card and the credit card, and they're doing their thing, and they're not often paying attention to the details. And so, I can certainly bring those to light and create a scenario.
Makes sense. A question that came up when you're talking about that: does you being involved, have you found that it helps prevent actual litigation, like the need to go to court in some cases, because they were able to help your client and realize that maybe it's not such a bad deal? Why would you want to take this to court and have some additional unnecessary attorney's fees?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like you never know, right? Because if it doesn't go to court, you don't know whether or not you impacted that per se. But I would like to think that the negotiation skills and the approach, like I will sit with a client and say, look, when you're talking to your lawyer, or when you're talking to your soon-to-be ex, think about the fact that there's something that you're trying to get. So even though he's trying to, or might be pressing a hot button or whatever, it's important to realize what am I going to get? Do I need to back off? It's a chess game. And so I would like to think that, I've kept people out of court and saved them many, many thousands of dollars as a result. Yes.
And they get a point to say that you only work with women. So I guess the first question is, why did you decide to do that? And part two of that is, what is the benefit of that versus, say, working with both spouses?
Right. So two great questions. Number one, the question of why did I choose to work with women? That was partly due to the coach that I hired back in 2009. We looked at my prior career. She did some profiling, if you will, the testing and so forth, and kind of established that, I had a better personality for women than I did for men. But then the discussion also, when you're dealing with money, and you and I'm sure would agree that for the most part, and this is a generalization, that us fellas hold things a little closer to the chest when it comes to finances, and we're a little more defensive when it comes to finances than women are. And for me, it's easier to talk to somebody who is a little bit more open, or a lot more open, and quite frankly talks more. I get more information that way, and I get a better understanding of what's going on. So I guess in in a macro sense, in my experience, they're easier to coach.
Okay. And I would, as you're saying that, I wrote down, I wonder, it's called coaching, but I'm sure men look at that as equal to therapy. And then you have that whole pushback,
Yeah. Yeah.
people not, men maybe not liking that idea at all.
I think that you may well be right. No question about that. I've been working. Look, I have developed quite a bias. There's no question. Like, I sit there. I don't ever meet the men. I just hear about them, and
Gotcha.
I don't know what's true and what's not true. I just look at the situation, try to keep it somewhat factual, listen to what is going on. Of course, that's important. I want to make sure. I mean, there are some situations where there's domestic violence, and
Hmm.
I listen for that. And not that I've been involved in very many situations where we've had to get somebody out of the house, but it
Yeah.
happens.
Yeah. And I assume that it's always good to niche down and not, work with the masses. And so to be a specialist with them. And I'm sure that stands out as far as if there's a coach, maybe they're looking at another coaching service that they're like, what, this
Mhm.
guy, Neil specializes in divorce, specializes in with women. I mean, I think, people think I think the general perspective is that you're limiting your client base, but I think by specializing, which is what I do as well, it kind of become the go person.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's definitely in my case has definitely
Yeah.
worked out to be beneficial.
So
And my understanding of everything is a little better, I believe.
yeah, makes sense. Now, one of the questions we had was, what's the difference between you and a financial advisor or planner? As you've held that position before, so I'm sure you know exactly what the differences
Mhm.
are.
Yeah, I mean the primary differences are the ability to handle money specifically, to manage money, to sell investments, to sell insurance if that's what the financial planner does, whatever that may be. That is a licensed, regulated profession, if you will. I mean, not to say that I don't do a good job and I'm not professional and knowledgeable and experienced and so forth, but coaching in general is not a licensed profession. You had mentioned earlier about where I do business. Well, can and do business anywhere in the world. I have absolutely
Hmm.
no limitations. The last few years, one of the silver linings, of course, has been exactly what we're doing right now, which is the video teleconferencing method. So while I do a lot of local work, no question, there are clients that I have that I wouldn't be working with if it wasn't for this technology, and so
Hmm.
I am able to. And with DTP, with our groups, like we have groups all over the country and in other countries, and as a result, I've been very fortunate to also have clients in many different places with exactly the same problems that the person has that's down the road from me. Same thing.
I know you were talking about you hired a coach, and
Mhm.
this idea came from that. Um, Working with women, did it specifically say, did the test say you should specifically become a divorce coach? Why did you choose this based off of those tests?
Oh no, it didn't say that. It said that I had a leaning toward working with females. It
Okay.
didn't talk about divorce coach or a money coach or a
Okay.
life coach. It didn't get into that. But that was a discussion that we had for, okay, fine, you're going to work with women. Let's say we've made that decision, and now we had a discussion
Yeah.
about, well, women are 50% of the world's population. That's not exactly a target group. So let's kind of niche it down, as you said. And
Yeah.
and so we talked about occupation classifications, geographic locations, and then we got into life situations, and that's where the divorce discussion came up.
Interesting. And then I'm sure you researched that field and did your due diligence. What ultimately made you decide to do that?
Well, yeah, I was, being that I was a financial advisor, I knew lots of professionals. And of course, I knew a number of people who, during the time that I was a financial advisor, did get divorced. I'm a child of divorce. My parents, got divorced when I was 20. So, I knew about it, and I knew that it was a fairly common occurrence. Of course, you hear about it in Hollywood, so it's always in the news that somebody's breaking up.
Yeah.
So it's not exactly like it was a subject that was difficult to learn about. But then I actually started a study group with some divorce professionals, family law, private investigation, mental health, that kind of thing. And it just became very clear that this was a place that I wanted to see if I could have an impact. And I believe I have.
And you've been doing this for how long, would you say?
Oh nine, so 14 years thus far.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and in 2017, I started what I call DTP, which is the Divorce Transition Professionals that you mentioned earlier. And
Yeah.
these are chapters that are all over the country, and we now have one in London that have within them professionals like you and me, lawyers, accountants, real estate, mental health, and so forth. They're networking and collaborative groups that meet once a month, talk about and collaborate around the divorce subject matter, bring in a speaker, get educated, and learn from one another. And these chapters are very helpful. And as far as I'm concerned, being a member of one and focusing in on that area is very telling when you're talking to a prospective client. So, well, I'm involved in this group and I have this amazing network of hundreds of professionals from which I can draw to help you get through this process. And as the tagline says, making divorce just a little bit easier.
Yeah. So these chapters you're talking about, you said there's one out here in Santa Clarita, and this
Mhm.
is all surrounding specialists that would need to be maybe pulled into a divorce process. I imagine. Not in every one of them, but they are
Correct.
there. In each chat, how are the chapters set up? Because you said you can draw from hundreds of people. Are the chapters
Mhm.
kind of built like those there's other, what do they call them, where people will have a realtor and these groups where they come and try and share referrals, and it's like one
Right.
person from each
Yeah.
segment, but yours is surrounded divorce. Is that how is it kind of set up that way, where each chapter
Yeah,
will
it's I
have?
mean, yes, I mean, it's a little bit different. We don't only have one. I mean, you might have, two or three lawyers, or you might have a couple of, so it's not like a one-off
Gotcha.
exclusive protected category type of thing. No, but it is like that. I mean, we do the, 1 minute introductions, and we do testimonials. But it's not all about the members. I mean, we bring in a quality speaker every month at every meeting to educate our members, and it's, yes, divorce related. Now, some of the people who are in there, some of the professionals who are in these groups are in the divorce business only to a degree. Like if
Hmm,
you're in the real estate business or mortgage business or insurance business, you're not going to have 100% of your business be divorce related. Maybe
of
it's
course.
20%.
Yeah.
But if you're a family lawyer, or maybe a private investigator, or maybe even a mental health professional, you might have 80, 90, or even 100% of your business be divorce related. And mine is. I mean, mine's like 95% divorce and maybe 5% widows.
Hmm, gotcha. So the idea around DTP is, are clients finding people within the group, or the group is exclusively, if they have a client, they will then share that client with the group, if they're, or refer those people within the group.
That second one, that latter one. I mean,
Okay.
we do have a fairly good web presence, and we do get the public looking at us and calling us and so forth. But primarily, we are promoting to the professional community, and the professional community is then collaborating amongst themselves and referring clients and developing cases and bringing folks in to help with that divorce process.
Gotcha. Earlier we were talking about just off the cuff, some of your clients' scenarios when you're on the phone with them with the attorney. Can you give
Mhm.
us like another example of some of the things that you do? And I was going to ask you, it's not, is it purely financial that you're working with them through, or are you also working through maybe custody issues or anything like that?
It is almost completely financially oriented. I mean, the custody issues that I might discuss would be around child support and the money there, but not custody itself.
Okay.
So no, I don't get involved in that. And here's an example. I was with a client yesterday, has a property owned by the husband and wife, and yes, they're getting divorced now. My client, would like to keep the house. You've got a house with a mortgage on it. The house value is about twice that of the mortgage, so there's nice equity in it. The mortgage is at 3%. In fact, I think it's at 2.75.
Hmm.
They're both on it. If you refinance, you're going to refinance to 7%, or maybe 6 if you're lucky in this market. And that's going to make it more expensive. And can she afford it? And maybe she can, maybe she can't. But then it happens to be a property with on a very large piece of, well, relatively large. It's on an acre, and the way
Oh,
it's
wow.
designed is on the other side of the property. There's a tree line, and there is actually a couple of structures back there. And so she's saying, and we're looking at the future, and she's 50 some years old, and we're saying, look, you're going to work for a certain number of years, but there's going to come a time when you want to retire. You and your husband have fairly equal income, so there's no spousal support going to be paid here. Maybe a little bit of child support, but that's not going to be terribly significant. So we got to figure out what to do. If you're going to keep the property, let's look at the future. What can we do here? And so we started looking at and researching ADUs. What can she build on the property? Could she build something on the property where the structures are now, or can the structures be remodeled and become something that she could live in? There's a teenager as well, and if she could do that, what would the rental value be of the main property, and what would she need to do to it to make sure that it was rentable at like if there's a lot of deferred maintenance that wasn't done and that kind of stuff. And so there's a lot of research being done, like we're bringing in a contractor and we're talking to folks that can make the house look better, and we're talking to a couple of different ADU builders, and looking at permit issues and stuff like that. So it's all financially related to get her to the point where she might be able to have a really nice income flow from that property, because of the size of it and the ability to put a small structure on there that she'd be quite comfortable living in. So that, there's one conversation that just occurred or continued yesterday,
Hmm.
of the type of work that I do get involved in with a client.
You really do quite a deep dive and look at all different possibilities. It's funny you brought up the interest rate issue and refinance. It's a big topic right now. I don't do any mediation part. Our clients have to either figure it out on their own or get a mediator. These are perfect topics that glad this came up, because I have people, handful of people I could send you now. They're trying to figure out how to do this. I don't know if you do that type of coaching. Just, hey, I don't want to put you in a mediator role. Not that they're just trying to make it work financially.
Right.
Very
Right.
similar, 2.5% interest rate. a ton of equity. It seems like many times one spouse wants to try and keep the house if possible.
Yeah.
Sometimes it would appear financially to their detriment, meaning going to a 6% interest rate, their payment doubling with that, and the add-on of the buyout portion of
Right.
the house.
Yeah, it can get really difficult. I don't actually do I mean, I'll work with like if you refer me to the wife, I would work with her and
Yeah, yeah,
help her to figure out what's best for her. And of course that would end up being discussed with him, and she would have the information necessary to be able to do that. On the other hand, if it's not an appropriate case for me, like I had, like this client, actually, is it this? Yes, it was the same client. Also hired a mediator who's a CDFA, certified default financial
uh,
analyst, and he is working with them both. So, like, she's coming to me, and I'm quote unquote protecting her interests, and that's fine, and that works. But they did need a neutral party to talk to them about how that would all work.
mm,
And we referred out to somebody that's in our network, and he's up in Santa Barbara, and they hired him. And we have a realtor involved, so that we know what values might be, and maybe ultimately the property would need to be sold. I don't know. So if somebody comes to me and it's not my bag for whatever reason, or I feel
yeah.
that they need, I'll come back to you, Tim. Like I always come back to the source and say, hey, Tim, this would be better served by, and then ask you what you want to do next. That would be my approach.
Makes sense. Earlier, we were talking about the difference between you and, say, a financial advisor slash planner, and then you brought
Hmm.
up the certified divorce financial analyst.
Hmm.
Could you give us a kind of, aside from just you're working with just the women's side,
Hmm.
like in this example you gave, aside from them working with both, what would a CDFA be able to do, or what would they do differently than what you offer? Just to try and find a distinction there.
Well, again, it depends on like in this case, the person who was referred for mediation. He's a CDFA, but he does mediation
Oh, interesting.
specifically. Yeah. So he was a financial advisor. He did manage money, and he happened to parlay his business. He said, I'm not going to do the money management anymore. I just want to do the divorce consultation and mediation. So he always had the CDFA. He just had it. Now,
Yeah.
there are lots of CDFAs out there, but usually, not always, but usually the certification is tied to the financial advisor and planner. So they're doing money management for the most part. They might do a financial plan and charge for it, but they're not doing the deep dive, as you called it. I thought that's a very good way to look at it. They're not really going to get into the type of real estate discussion that I'm in the middle of, for instance. That wouldn't be something that
Mm,
is normal
yeah.
for a financial planner and a CDFA. So the CDFA financial planner is usually more involved in the management of money, and then creating a budget or a cash flow or doing projections on values and that kind of thing is
Yeah.
part of what they'll do. It just won't be a day-to-day, week-to-week deep dive as you described it. I like that.
Awesome, Neil. I think we covered a lot of things I wanted to discuss. Is there anything I didn't ask you that I should have?
No, I think this is perfect. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to your audience and to talk to you. And I look forward to the opportunity. You're not that far away. Hopefully, I will get to meet
Right over the
at some
hill.
point.
Exactly. And
Yeah,
Neil, how do
yeah.
folks get a hold of you if they did want to contact you? What's your preferred method?
Well, I am quite happy with either email, text, or calling. If you want to email me, Neil at thewealthcreatorcompany.com. You can just spell it all out. If you want to call me or text me, I take all my own calls. I don't have anybody screening for me.
Yeah.
818 606-7327. And I'm happy to chat with anybody. I always provide a complimentary consultation, which is generally around 45 minutes, and we can get into the nitty-gritty. Sometimes those consultations, by the way, are enough. Like, you don't even need to hire me.
Yeah.
Just get you to the right people and off you go. Sometimes you don't need me, but I'm happy to do the consult.
Yeah, very good. And then the website is thewealthcreatorcompany.com if they wanted to learn more as well.
That's
Neil,
right.
again, I'm surprised it took me this long, it's going on 11 years doing this for our paths to cross, being
Me
that we're
too, yeah.
in a related and we're nearby. So I'll definitely stay in touch. I'll connect with you maybe on LinkedIn, and I'm interested in taking a look at your divorce transition professionals. I don't know how I didn't come upon that either, being that you guys have a chapter out here, because I think I've been out here 25 years, so I think I know the players that are out here. But I'm going to take a look at that. But again,
All
Neil,
right.
so glad to have you on and have met you. Great conversation. It'll be very helpful to the folks who watch my content. Again, just very grateful. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Tim. Enjoyed being
All
here.
right. Take care.